Have you ever
So
felt like
much
you were
clearer
written out of your
understanding.
own life
These
by a
signs
single
can
photo?
transform how
No
you approach
message, no phone
relationships,
call, just a tiny
giving you
red
a
dot on
deeper
Instagram,
insight
and
into
suddenly
what's
your whole world
really
shifts. I remember that
so
afternoon
much
so
clearer
clearly. Chilly
understanding.
weather,
These
light
signs can
rain. I was
transform
alone in
how
my
you
small
approach
Portland apartment,
relationships,
holding a warm mug of
giving you a
tea.
deeper
I opened my
insight
phone
into
just
what's
to pass a few
really
quiet minutes before my next
so much
meeting. Then the
clearer
notification.
understanding.
Brooke
These
just
signs
posted.
can
Perfect
transform how
family
you approach
gathering. Complete at
relationships,
last. Boom.
giving you a
I
deeper
tapped it,
insight into
still
what's
unaware of what was
really
waiting on the other side.
so
And then the
much
photo
clearer
appeared vibrant,
understanding. These
cozy,
signs
and
can
missing one
transform how you
person.
approach
Everyone was there.
relationships,
The Thanksgiving
giving you a
table,
deeper insight
impossibly
into what's
long, glowing under
really
Mom's antique chandelier,
so much
familiar
clearer
smiles, clinking
understanding.
wine
These
glasses.
signs
All
can
the dishes I
transform
grew
how
up
you
with,
approach
from Mom's cranberry
relationships,
sauce to Aunt
giving you a
Jenny's green
deeper
bean
insight into
casserole
what's
to Grandma's
really
famous pumpkin pie. There was
so
just one
much
person
clearer
not in the frame,
understanding.
me,
These
and in
signs
that
can
moment,
transform
I
how you
realized
approach
I hadn't been
relationships,
forgotten. I had been
giving you a
excluded
deeper insight
deliberately.
into
Before
what's
we go
really
further, let me ask you something.
so
Have you ever
much
felt like
clearer
the outsider in
understanding.
your own
These signs
family?
can
That
transform
subtle
how you
ache like
approach
you're always standing
relationships,
at the edge,
giving you a
watching a
deeper
picture
insight
perfect
into
moment
what's
unfold
really
without you in it. If you have,
so much
then this video
clearer
is for you,
understanding.
not to
These
vent,
signs can
not to
transform
blame,
how you
but to
approach
share a story,
relationships,
a journey from
giving you a
rejection to
deeper
reclaiming
insight
your
into
voice,
what's
a journey
really
for those of us who stopped waiting
so
for a
much
seat at
clearer
someone else's
understanding.
table
These
and
signs
decided to
can
build our own
transform how you
instead.
approach
It all started with
relationships,
that one moment,
giving
the
you a
moment I
deeper
realized I
insight
wasn't
into what's
invited, and the
really
moment I chose to do something my
so
family
much
never
clearer
expected me to do.
understanding.
There's so
These
much more
signs can
behind what looked
transform how
like
you
just
approach
another family
relationships,
photo. And coming up
giving you a
next,
deeper
I'll tell
insight
you
into
exactly
what's
what happened
really
after those perfectly filtered
so much
images. Come
clearer
with me. Let's
understanding.
begin this
These
journey
signs can
together. It
transform
always
how you
starts with
approach
something
relationships,
small, a sound,
giving
a
you a
light.
deeper
For
insight
me,
into
it
what's
was the soft
really
glow of my phone screen lighting up on
so
the
much
coffee table.
clearer
I wasn't
understanding.
expecting
These
anything,
signs
just
can
passing the
transform how
time on
you
a
approach
quiet Wednesday
relationships,
afternoon the day before
giving you a
Thanksgiving.
deeper
I reached
insight
for my
into what's
phone without
really
thinking, a habit more than anything
so
else.
much
And there it
clearer
was, that tiny
understanding.
red dot
These
on
signs can
Instagram. Brooke
transform how
posted
you
a new
approach
photo. I tapped
relationships,
it, not out of
giving you a deeper
curiosity, not
insight
even
into
out of
what's
interest, just
really
reflex. And then I stopped
so
breathing.
much
The image
clearer
that filled my screen
understanding.
was
These
warm,
signs can
golden,
transform how you
familiar.
approach
My family, all
relationships,
of them gathered
giving
around the
you a
long
deeper
dining
insight
table I
into
knew by
what's
heart.
really
Mom's chandelier casting soft
so
light on
much
crystal wine
clearer
glasses.
understanding.
Dad at the
These
head,
signs can
carving turkey
transform
with
how
the
you
same
approach
silver knife from every
relationships,
childhood memory.
giving you a
Kyle,
deeper
my
insight into
brother,
what's
laughing with his
really
wife. My sister Brooke in her
so
usual
much
picture
clearer
perfect sweater.
understanding.
Even
These
Grandma,
signs can
wearing the pearl
transform how you
necklace she
approach
once promised she'd
relationships,
give to me on my
giving you a
30th
deeper
birthday. The
insight into
caption
what's
read,
really
Perfect family gathering. Complete
so
at
much
last.
clearer
Complete, that
understanding.
word
These
hit harder
signs
than
can
any
transform
image,
how you
because I
approach
wasn't in that photo.
relationships,
Not just missing, I
giving
had
you
been
a
left
deeper
out,
insight into
forgotten would have
what's
hurt. But
really
this was different. This was
so
deliberate.
much
It's a
clearer
strange thing,
understanding. These
realizing you've been
signs can
erased.
transform how
One
you approach
second, you're scrolling
relationships,
through pictures.
giving
The
you a
next,
deeper
you feel
insight
like the
into
world's
what's
just moved on
really
without you. And maybe it
so
has. You
much
start to
clearer
question everything.
understanding.
Was it
These
something I
signs can
said? Did I
transform how you
imagine being
approach
part of them all these
relationships,
years? Have I
giving
always
you a
been
deeper
optional?
insight
And
into
here's the
what's
thing, I know
really
I'm not alone in this. So many people
so
I've
much
spoken to
clearer
friends,
understanding.
colleagues,
These
even
signs can
strangers have
transform how
shared
you
some
approach
version of this
relationships,
story. A wedding they
giving you
weren't
a deeper
invited to, a
insight into
family
what's
chat they were
really
never added to, a milestone
so
moment
much
they found
clearer
out about from
understanding.
someone
These
else's
signs
social
can
media
transform how
post.
you
We don't
approach
talk about it much
relationships,
because it feels
giving you a
petty,
deeper
it feels
insight into
dramatic.
what's
But let me tell you
really
something. Being excluded
so
by the
much
people who are
clearer
supposed to love you
understanding. These
unconditionally
signs
is
can
not
transform how
small.
you
It's a
approach
cut you carry deep.
relationships,
A small lesson
giving
I
you a
learned that
deeper
day.
insight into
Sometimes
what's
silence is the
really
loudest betrayal because when they
so
don't
much
invite
clearer
you, when they
understanding.
don't call,
These
when they
signs
don't
can
even
transform how
explain
you
what they're
approach
really saying
relationships,
is, we didn't think you
giving you a
mattered enough
deeper
to
insight
include.
into
And that
what's
kind of message, it
really
sticks. But what if that
so
moment
much
that hurt
clearer
could be the beginning
understanding.
of something
These
else?
signs can
Something
transform how you
clearer,
approach
something stronger.
relationships,
Because what followed
giving you a
next
deeper
wasn't just
insight into
pain. It
what's
was a trail of
really
clues I had ignored for years,
so much
breadcrumbs of
clearer
exclusion I never
understanding.
wanted to
These
admit were
signs can
real. And so
transform
in the
how you
next part
approach
of this journey,
relationships,
I want to show you what I
giving you a
found when
deeper
I started
insight
looking
into what's
backward at
really
every missed invitation, every
so
sidelong
much
comment,
clearer
every carefully
understanding.
cropped
These
photo.
signs can
Sometimes
transform
the
how you
truth
approach
doesn't show up all at
relationships,
once.
giving you a
Sometimes
deeper
it arrives in
insight into
pieces.
what's
And piece by
really
piece, I started seeing the pattern.
so
Let's
much
talk about that
clearer
next. After
understanding.
that
These
Instagram
signs can
photo, I wanted
transform
to
how
believe
you
it was a
approach
mistake, a
relationships, giving
misunderstanding.
you a
Maybe they
deeper
thought I was
insight into
busy.
what's
Maybe someone
really
forgot to send the message.
So much
Maybe it
clearer
wasn't personal.
understanding.
So I did
These
what many of
signs
us
can
do when we're
transform how
hurt
you
by
approach
people we love.
relationships,
I gave them the benefit
giving
of the
you a
doubt.
deeper
I
insight
opened my
into what's
texts,
really
expecting to find a missed message,
so
a
much
forgotten
clearer
voicemail,
understanding.
some tiny
These
thread of
signs can
explanation,
transform
but there
how
was
you approach
nothing,
relationships,
just silence. That's when it
giving you a
hit me.
deeper
This
insight
wasn't
into
new.
what's
This had happened
really
before, over and over again.
so
I
much
started going
clearer
back in my memory
understanding.
and then through
These
old
signs
photos,
can transform how
messages,
you
even
approach
journals, and
relationships,
suddenly I
giving
could
you a
see
deeper
it, the
insight into
pattern,
what's
like the time they
really
opened Christmas gifts without
so
me
much
because we thought
clearer
you were sleeping.
understanding.
Or my
These
high school
signs can transform
graduation where
how
they
you
left
approach
before I walked the
relationships,
stage because Brooke
giving you a
wasn't
deeper
feeling well.
insight
Or
into
my
what's
16th
really
birthday, a cupcake from the grocery
so
store and
much
a card
clearer
signed in a rush
understanding.
2 hours
These
after
signs
Brooke's
can
sweet
transform
16
how
had
you
a
approach
tent, a 3-tier
relationships,
cake, and
giving you a
100
deeper
guests,
insight
one
into
memory
what's
at a time.
really
It all came flooding back.
so
And still I
much
had made
clearer
excuses.
understanding.
We all do.
These signs
Because
can
accepting the
transform how
truth
you
that your
approach
family might not
relationships,
see you the way you
giving you a
hoped is
deeper
one of the
insight
hardest
into
things
what's
in the world.
really
So we call it miscommunication.
so
We
much
say they
clearer
meant well. We
understanding.
laugh it off.
These signs
Swallow
can
it down.
transform
Fold
how you
ourselves
approach
smaller each time,
relationships,
hoping next time we'll be
giving you a
noticed,
deeper
loved,
insight into what's
included. But
really
at some point, we stop
so
asking what's
much
wrong with
clearer
us and start
understanding.
asking,
These
why
signs
did they
can
never make
transform how
space
you
for me in the
approach
first place?
relationships,
Here's what I wrote in
giving
my
you a
journal when
deeper
I was
insight into
13.
what's
Maybe if I'm
really
quieter, they'll notice me more.
so much
Maybe if I don't
clearer
ask for anything,
understanding.
they'll
These
want to
signs
give.
can
Maybe if
transform
I
how you
fold
approach
myself small enough,
relationships,
I'll finally fit.
giving you a
Reading those
deeper
words again
insight
as an
into
adult
what's
broke something
really
open in me. Because I realized
so
it wasn't
much
just
clearer
forgetfulness.
understanding.
It wasn't
These
just bad
signs
luck.
can
It was a
transform how you
system,
approach
a quiet
relationships,
erasure that happened in slow
giving you a
motion
deeper
year after
insight
year.
into
A
what's
small but
really
powerful lesson I've learned.
so
Sometimes the
much
most painful
clearer
truths don't come all at
understanding. These
once. They
signs can
whisper,
transform
they
how you
wait,
approach
and then one day
relationships,
you finally
giving you a
listen and
deeper
you can never
insight into
unhear
what's
them again.
really
That's what happened to me. And when I
so
finally
much
stopped
clearer
ignoring the
understanding.
whispers, I
These
noticed
signs
something
can
else.
transform
There
how
was a
you
role I'd
approach
been assigned all
relationships,
along, and it was
giving
never
you a
meant to
deeper
be the
insight
hero
into
or the
what's
favorite.
really
It was to be invisible. But
so
if I
much
was the one who
clearer
had always been
understanding.
overlooked,
These
then
signs
who had
can
always been
transform how
seen?
you
Let's
approach
talk about that
relationships,
next, because in every
giving
story
you a
like
deeper
mine,
insight
there's
into
someone
what's
else at the center
really
of the family portrait. And it's
so
usually
much
the golden
clearer
child.
understanding.
There's something
These
no one really
signs can
teaches you as a
transform how
kid
you
growing
approach
up in a family.
relationships,
That sometimes
giving you a
you're all
deeper
playing
insight
roles
into
long
what's
before you even
really
realize you're part of a script.
so
For
much
some,
clearer
that role is the
understanding.
smart one.
These
For
signs can
others, it's
transform
the
how you
peacemaker.
approach
And in some
relationships,
families, the
giving
roles
you
are
a
even
deeper
sharper.
insight
The
into
golden
what's
child and the
really
shadow child. In my family,
so much
Brooke was the
clearer
golden one.
understanding.
She always had the
These
brightest
signs can
smile in the
transform how you
photos.
approach
She was the one Mom
relationships,
bragged about at church,
giving you
the
a
one who
deeper
wore
insight
matching
into
dresses
what's
with Mom to
really
charity luncheons. She got straight
so
A's,
much
and when I
clearer
did too, it was
understanding.
well.
These
Of course
signs
you
can
did. But
transform how
Brooke's
you
taking
approach
honors
relationships,
classes. When Brooke got a
giving you a
promotion,
deeper
the whole
insight
family
into
had
what's
dinner to
really
celebrate. When I got featured in a
so
national
much
magazine for
clearer
a design
understanding.
campaign,
These
Mom sent
signs
a
can
thumbs up
transform how
emoji.
you
Now don't
approach
get me wrong, Brooke
relationships,
isn't a villain. She
giving you
played
a
the role
deeper
she was
insight
given,
into what's
just like I did.
really
And maybe she didn't even notice
so
how the
much
spotlight
clearer
always tilted
understanding.
toward her.
These
But
signs
from
can
where I
transform
stood,
how you
just out
approach
of frame, the
relationships,
contrast was sharp.
giving you a
Every time
deeper
she
insight
succeeded,
into what's
it was a family
really
victory. Every time I succeeded,
so much
it was an
clearer
afterthought.
understanding.
That's the thing
These
about being
signs
the
can
shadow
transform
child.
how you
You're
approach
always visible
relationships,
enough to be compared,
giving you
but
a
never
deeper
quite enough to be
insight into what's
celebrated. I
really
remember looking through our family photo
so
albums
much
once.
clearer
Brooke was in the
understanding.
center of
These
every
signs can
birthday
transform
picture,
how you
candles
approach
glowing,
relationships,
cake lit.
giving
Everyone
you a
gathered
deeper
around,
insight
and
into
there I
what's
was off to the
really
side, blurry, half
so
cropped.
much
Even in
clearer
the photos,
understanding.
I was never
These
really in
signs can
them. Here's what
transform
I
how
wish
you
someone
approach
had told me back
relationships,
then. The roles were
giving you a
cast into
deeper
as children
insight
aren't
into what's
reflections of who we
really
are. They're reflections of who
so
the
much
family needed
clearer
us to be.
understanding.
But the problem
These
is,
signs can
once those roles
transform
are
how you approach
assigned, they become
relationships,
stories we start telling
giving you a
ourselves.
deeper
I'm not the
insight into
favorite.
what's
I'm the
really
difficult one. I have to work harder
so
just
much
to be
clearer
seen, and
understanding.
those stories shape
These
us
signs
far
can
beyond the
transform how
family
you
dinner
approach
table. My
relationships,
small lesson from all of
giving you a
this,
deeper
just because you
insight
grew up
into
in
what's
someone else's
really
shadow doesn't mean the light was never
so much
yours.
clearer
You were never
understanding.
less, you were
These
just
signs can
unseen.
transform
But
how you
unseen
approach
doesn't mean unworthy.
relationships,
Still,
giving
back
you a
then,
deeper
I didn't
insight
know
into
that.
what's
I thought the
really
only way to earn love was to
so
keep
much
proving
clearer
myself, work
understanding.
harder,
These
get
signs
better.
can
Maybe
transform
then
how you
they'd
approach
notice.
relationships,
But what happens when you
giving
achieve
you a deeper
everything
insight
and they
into
still look
what's
the other
really
way? That's where we're headed next.
so
Because in the
much
next
clearer
part of this
understanding.
journey, I'll tell
These
you about the
signs can
moment I
transform
reached
how
a
you
level of
approach
success I'd once
relationships,
only dreamed of,
giving you
and
a
the
deeper
silence that
insight
followed.
into what's
We grow up with
really
stories that say
so
family
much
is everything.
clearer
That blood is
understanding.
thicker
These
than water.
signs can
That no matter
transform
what
how you approach
happens, your family will
relationships,
always be there.
giving
It's
you
a
a deeper
comforting thought,
insight
and for
into what's
some,
really
it's true. But for many of us,
so
it's a
much
story that
clearer
starts to crack the
understanding.
older we
These
get.
signs
I used
can
to believe in that
transform how
myth.
you
I
approach
clung to it like a
relationships,
lifeline. Every
giving you a
missed
deeper
birthday,
insight
every
into what's
sidestepped
really
achievement, every gathering I wasn't
so
invited
much
to, I
clearer
told myself it
understanding.
didn't matter
These
because they're
signs
my
can transform
family.
how
They
you
love
approach
me. They just show
relationships,
it differently.
giving
That's
you a
what I
deeper
used to say
insight into
until the
what's
silence got
really
louder than the words. I remember
so
the
much
exact moment it
clearer
shifted.
understanding.
I had just
These
been
signs
promoted
can
to creative
transform how you
director, the
approach
youngest in my
relationships,
firm's history.
giving
It
you
was
a
a huge
deeper
moment for
insight
me.
into
My
what's
photo was on the
really
company website. My designs
so
were on
much
billboards.
clearer
Adweek even
understanding.
ran a piece
These
about my
signs
latest
can
campaign.
transform how
I
you
sent the
approach
link to my mom.
relationships,
No reply.
giving you
No
a
call,
deeper
just
insight into
silence.
what's
3 days
really
later, she texted me a photo
so
of
much
Brooke at a
clearer
charity brunch.
understanding.
No mention
These
of my
signs
work.
can
No
transform how
congrats.
you approach
Just,
relationships,
doesn't Brooke look lovely in
giving
that
you a
blue
deeper
dress?
insight
And I
into
realized
what's
something.
really
Love isn't always unconditional,
so
and
much
family isn't
clearer
always love.
understanding.
See,
These
here's what
signs
no
can
one tells you.
transform how
Just
you
because
approach
people share your
relationships,
DNA doesn't
giving
mean they
you a
know how to
deeper
nurture your
insight into
soul.
what's
Some families
really
operate more like clubs with
so
unspoken
much
rules,
clearer
quiet
understanding.
hierarchies,
These
and
signs
conditions
can
for
transform
inclusion.
how you
If you
approach
fit the image,
relationships,
if you play your part,
giving you a
you're
deeper
in.
insight
If
into
not,
what's
you're
really
inconvenient. A truth I've come to
So
accept,
much
and maybe you
clearer
have too.
understanding.
You can love
These
people
signs can
deeply and still
transform how you
recognize they
approach
hurt you.
relationships,
You can be related to
giving you
someone
a
and still
deeper
set
insight
boundaries.
into what's
And choosing
really
distance doesn't make you ungrateful.
so
It makes you
much
whole.
clearer
A small but
understanding.
powerful
These
lesson.
signs
Love
can
that must be
transform
earned
how
isn't
you
love,
approach
it's approval.
relationships,
And approval can
giving you a
vanish the
deeper
moment you
insight
stop
into what's
performing. So what
really
happens when you stop performing?
so
When you
much
put down the
clearer
script,
understanding.
step off the
These
stage,
signs can
and say,
transform how
I'm
you
done
approach
trying to be who you need me
relationships,
to be. It
giving
doesn't
you a
always lead
deeper
to a warm
insight
hug
into
or a
what's
tearful
really
reconciliation. Sometimes
so
it leads
much
to
clearer
silence, other times
understanding.
to
These
clarity.
signs
And for
can
me,
transform
it
how
led
you
to
approach
something I never
relationships,
expected.
giving
Proof,
you a
because
deeper
right after
insight
that
into
Thanksgiving
what's
post,
really
something landed in my inbox.
so
A
much
message that would
clearer
change everything.
understanding.
We
These
live in a
signs
time
can
where keeping
transform how you
receipts
approach
usually means catching
relationships,
someone in a lie.
giving you a deeper
Screenshots,
insight into
voice
what's
notes,
really
messages saved just in case. But
so
for
much
me,
clearer
keeping receipts wasn't
understanding.
about
These
revenge.
signs can
It wasn't even
transform how
about
you
proving a
approach
point. It
relationships,
was about finally
giving you a
validating
deeper
what I had
insight
felt for
into
so
what's
long.
really
After the Thanksgiving post, the one where I
so
wasn't
much
just
clearer
absent,
understanding.
but deliberately
These signs
erased,
can
I received
transform
an
how
email
you
from my
approach
cousin Jake.
relationships,
The subject line
giving you a
read,
deeper
"You need to know the
insight
truth
into
about
what's
Thanksgiving."
really
Inside were screenshots, a
so
private
much
family group
clearer
chat, weeks
understanding.
of
These
planning,
signs can
detailed menus,
transform how you
outfit
approach
color codes,
relationships,
flight schedules.
giving
And
you a
right at the
deeper
top,
insight
don't
into
mention
what's
this to Lena.
really
That one sentence undid
so
decades of
much
doubt.
clearer
It wasn't my
understanding.
imagination.
These
It wasn't
signs
me
can
being too
transform how you
sensitive.
approach
It was real. I
relationships,
created a folder on my
giving you a
desktop
deeper
and labeled
insight
it
into
Family
what's
Evidence.
really
At first, it felt petty,
so much
but then I
clearer
realized I wasn't
understanding.
collecting
These
proof to
signs
attack
can
anyone.
transform how
I was
you
gathering
approach
clarity.
relationships,
I saved every
giving
overlooked
you a
text,
deeper
every
insight into
forgotten
what's
birthday
really
message, every time they showed up for
so
someone else
much
but not for
clearer
me. And
understanding.
slowly,
These
a
signs
story
can
started to
transform
take
how you
shape.
approach
My story,
relationships,
not the version they
giving you
told
a
at
deeper
holidays,
insight
not the
into what's
narrative where I was
really
too quiet or hard to include,
so
but the
much
truth
clearer
documented in my
understanding.
own words,
These
my
signs
own
can
memories,
transform how
my
you
own
approach
voice. I even
relationships,
opened my childhood
giving you a
journals.
deeper
One entry from
insight into
7th
what's
grade read,
really
"Maybe if I smile more, they'll like
so
me
much
better. Maybe
clearer
if I stay out of the
understanding.
way,
These
I won't be a
signs can
problem."
transform
Reading
how
that
you
as an
approach
adult hurt in a
relationships,
different way,
giving
because I
you a
could see
deeper
how early I
insight into
started
what's
editing
really
myself just to be allowed in the room.
so
And
much
here's the
clearer
lesson I want to share with
understanding.
you today.
These signs can
Documentation isn't
transform
about
how you
holding on to
approach
the pain.
relationships,
It's about finally
giving
letting
you a
yourself
deeper
believe it
insight into what's
existed. We can't
really
heal what we keep doubting. We
so
can't
much
move forward
clearer
if we keep
understanding.
gaslighting
These
ourselves.
signs can
Writing it
transform
down,
how you
saving
approach
the messages,
relationships,
holding the memories up
giving
to
you a
the light.
deeper
It gives
insight
you a
into
kind
what's
of power that
really
silence never will. It
so
says,
much
"This
clearer
happened. I
understanding.
wasn't
These
crazy. I
signs
wasn't
can
imagining
transform
it."
how you
And
approach
sometimes that's the
relationships,
first step to
giving you
healing.
a
Because
deeper
once you've
insight
seen the
into
full
what's
picture, you
really
can't unsee it. And when you
so
stop
much
seeking their
clearer
version of the
understanding.
truth,
These
you start
signs can
creating your
transform
own.
how
And
you
in
approach
doing that, you might
relationships,
discover something
giving
else.
you a
That
deeper
family doesn't
insight
always
into
come from
what's
blood.
really
Sometimes it finds you in the
so
people who
much
choose
clearer
you, just as you
understanding.
are.
These
Let me tell you
signs
about
can
them next.
transform how
After
you
the
approach
silence,
relationships,
after the screenshots,
giving you a
after the
deeper insight
heartbreak,
into
came
what's
something
really
unexpected. It was a knock on my
so
door,
much
and behind
clearer
it stood Sarah,
understanding.
my best
These
friend since
signs can
college,
transform how
holding a
you
bottle
approach
of wine in one
relationships,
hand and a box of
giving you a
tissues in
deeper
the other.
insight
I
into
saw the
what's
photos, she
really
said. I brought
so
reinforcements.
much
That
clearer
night, my
understanding.
apartment, once
These
filled with
signs can
silence and
transform how
unanswered
you approach
questions, became
relationships,
alive with laughter,
giving you a
warmth,
deeper
and the
insight
clink
into
of
what's
mismatched
really
glasses. Sarah, my
so
coworker
much
Mark,
clearer
the barista from
understanding. These
downstairs,
signs can
neighbors,
transform how you
friends,
approach
people who had no
relationships,
obligation to love me,
giving you a
but showed
deeper
up anyway.
insight into
And
what's
that's when I realized
really
something powerful. Family isn't
so
who you're
much
born to,
clearer
it's who shows
understanding.
up.
These
Again
signs can
and
transform
again
how
and
you
again.
approach
We talk a lot
relationships,
about chosen
giving you
family,
a
but for
deeper
many of
insight
us,
into what's
it's not a poetic
really
idea. It's survival.
so
It's
much
healing.
clearer
It's real.
understanding.
Chosen
These
family is
signs
the
can
friend who
transform how
texts
you
you on your
approach
birthday
relationships,
because they remembered the
giving
year
you a
your
deeper
parents forgot.
insight into
It's the
what's
colleague who
really
stays late to help you meet a
so
deadline.
much
Not
clearer
because it's their job,
understanding.
but
These
because they
signs
see
can
your
transform
effort.
how you
It's the
approach
neighbor who knocks on
relationships,
your door just to
giving you a
say,
deeper
"Hey,
insight
I
into
made too
what's
much pasta,
really
want some?" It's the people who see you
so
without
much
you having to
clearer
prove anything.
understanding.
And
These
here's the most
signs can
beautiful part.
transform how you
Chosen
approach
family doesn't care about
relationships,
your performance.
giving you
They
a
care
deeper
about your
insight into
presence.
what's
They're not waiting
really
for you to get a promotion or
so
show up
much
polished
clearer
or act the way
understanding.
they
These
wish you would.
signs can
They meet you where
transform
you
how you
are.
approach
And for someone like
relationships,
me, someone who
giving you a
spent
deeper
years trying to
insight
earn
into
love
what's
that always
really
seemed one step out of reach,
so
that
much
kind of love
clearer
felt like breathing
understanding.
for the
These
first
signs
time.
can
My small
transform
but
how you
life-changing
approach
lesson.
relationships,
Sometimes the love you
giving you a
didn't
deeper
expect
insight
ends up
into
being the
what's
most honest,
really
the most healing, the most
so
true.
much
And here's
clearer
what happens when you
understanding.
begin to
These
feel that
signs
kind
can
of
transform
love.
how you
You stop
approach
begging, you
relationships,
stop shrinking,
giving you
and
a deeper
slowly you
insight
start
into
building
what's
a life that
really
fits you. Not the version of you
so
others tried
much
to mold,
clearer
but letting go
understanding.
of their
These
approval.
signs can
That's not
transform how
easy.
you
It
approach
means stepping away
relationships,
from the stage,
giving you a
walking out
deeper
of the roles
insight
they
into what's
assigned, and
really
daring to say, I don't need your
so
permission
much
to be
clearer
whole. And that
understanding.
moment,
These
that
signs can
shift from people
transform how
pleasing to
you approach
peace, that's what we'll
relationships,
talk about next.
giving
I
you a
used to
deeper
believe that if
insight
I
into
just did
what's
everything
really
right, one day they'd see me,
so
if I
much
worked hard
clearer
enough, stayed
understanding.
polite
These
enough,
signs
if I
can
showed up
transform
even
how
when
you
it hurt,
approach
maybe, just maybe,
giving you a
I'd finally
deeper
earn a seat
insight
at the
into what's
table. But the
really
truth is, you can be everything
so
they
much
asked for,
clearer
and it still won't be
understanding.
enough for
These
people
signs
who
can
only love a
transform how
version of
you
you they
approach
invented.
relationships,
That realization
giving you
didn't
a
come
deeper
easy. It
insight
came
into
one
what's
quiet evening
really
when my phone rang and the
so
screen lit up
much
with a
clearer
familiar name,
understanding.
Mom.
These
She'd seen
signs
the
can
photo I
transform how
posted,
you
the
approach
one of me smiling with
relationships,
my chosen
giving
family,
you a deeper
laughing,
insight into what's
radiant, finally
really
free. Her voice on the line was
so
tight.
much
You
clearer
embarrassed the whole
understanding.
family.
These
What will
signs
people
can
think?
transform
And
how
for
you
the
approach
first time in my
relationships,
life, I didn't
giving you
explain.
a
I
deeper
didn't
insight
apologize.
into
I
what's
didn't try to
really
soften the truth. I said one word
so
that
much
changed
clearer
everything. No,
understanding.
no,
These
I won't
signs can
pretend this didn't
transform how
hurt.
you approach
No, I won't
relationships,
excuse what you did.
giving you
No,
a
I
deeper
won't keep
insight
shrinking
into
to make
what's
space for
really
others. No, I won't keep
so
chasing
much
the version
clearer
of love you
understanding.
only offer
These
with
signs can
conditions.
transform
It
how you
wasn't a
approach
scream. It wasn't a
relationships,
dramatic scene.
giving you a
Just a
deeper
boundary finally
insight into
spoken
what's
out loud.
really
The thing about people pleasing is that
so
it feels
much
noble
clearer
until you
understanding.
realize it's
These
slowly
signs can
erasing you.
transform how
Every
you
yes you
approach
didn't mean, every
relationships,
time you let the guilt
giving you a
win,
deeper
every time you
insight
hoped
into
that by
what's
being
really
agreeable, you'd finally be accepted.
so
But
much
real
clearer
belonging doesn't
understanding.
require you
These
to
signs can
disappear. I
transform
remember
how
Sarah
you
saying
approach
to me that night,
relationships,
"You don't owe
giving you a
anyone
deeper
access to the
insight into
version of
what's
you that
really
broke to fit their comfort."
so
That line
much
stayed with
clearer
me because
understanding.
that's
These
exactly what I
signs
had
can
been doing for
transform how you
years.
approach
Folding,
relationships,
twisting, dimming
giving you a
myself to
deeper
become
insight
palatable.
into
But
what's
the moment I said
really
no, something amazing
so
happened.
much
Nothing
clearer
exploded. The
understanding.
world didn't
These
end,
signs
and
can
for the first
transform how
time,
you
I
approach
felt steady,
relationships,
rooted,
giving you a
whole.
deeper
Here's the small
insight
but
into what's
powerful lesson I want to
really
share. Saying no to them
so
was
much
saying yes to
clearer
myself. It
understanding.
was reclaiming
These signs
space I
can
had long given
transform how
away.
you
It was
approach
telling the younger
relationships,
version of me, the one
giving
who
you a deeper
whispered,
insight
maybe they'll
into
love
what's
me if I stay
really
quiet, that she didn't have to
so
whisper
much
anymore.
clearer
And once you stop
understanding. These
performing, you
signs
begin
can
to notice
transform
who
how
was
you
only
approach
clapping when you
relationships,
played their favorite part.
giving you a
But you
deeper
also start to
insight into
notice
what's
who stayed when the
really
stage lights went off, who
so
reached for
much
you when you
clearer
weren't trying,
understanding.
who loved
These
you in your
signs can
stillness,
transform
not
how
your
you approach
striving. And
relationships,
sometimes when the truth finally
giving you a deeper
rises, it doesn't
insight
just
into
free
what's
you, it
really
shakes the whole room. In my case,
so much
it did more
clearer
than that. Because
understanding.
when I
These
stopped
signs can
pretending and
transform how
finally
you
spoke
approach
up, the
relationships,
internet noticed. And
giving
so
you a
did my
deeper
entire
insight
extended
into what's
family. Let me show
really
you what happened next. When I
so
pressed
much
send on that
clearer
email, the one
understanding.
addressed to
These
all
signs can
47 members
transform
of
how
our
you
extended
approach
family,
relationships,
I didn't know what would
giving
happen.
you a
I just
deeper
knew one
insight
thing.
into
I
what's
was done
really
carrying a story that didn't belong to
so
me.
much
The story that I
clearer
was
understanding.
difficult, that I
These
wasn't
signs can
interested, that
transform
I
how
had
you
chosen
approach
distance.
relationships,
So I did what I never
giving
thought
you a
I'd have the
deeper
courage to
insight into
do.
what's
I laid it all
really
out, the screenshots, the
so
missed
much
birthdays,
clearer
the cropped out
understanding.
photos,
These
the
signs can
silence,
transform
no
how you
anger,
approach
no blame,
relationships,
just truth. And
giving
the
you a
moment that
deeper
truth
insight
landed,
into
something
what's
shifted.
really
My phone lit up.
so
Fast.
much
Brooke,
clearer
how dare you
understanding.
embarrass us
These
like
signs
this?
can
Take it down
transform how
now.
you approach
Mom, call me
relationships,
this instant.
giving
You've
you a
gone too
deeper
far.
insight
But then
into
came
what's
the others.
really
Uncle Robert, is this
so
real?
much
Cousin
clearer
Rachel. Oh my
understanding.
God, I
These
had no
signs
idea.
can
And then
transform how you
strangers.
approach
'Cause somewhere along
relationships,
the way, someone
giving you a
shared the
deeper
post. And
insight
the
into
internet,
what's
well, it
really
has a way of holding mirrors to the
so
stories we
much
try to
clearer
hide. People
understanding.
began
These
commenting on
signs
Brooke's
can
Instagram
transform how you
photo.
approach
Where's your
relationships,
sister? How could you leave
giving
her
you a
out?
deeper
This seems
insight into
cruel.
what's
Her picture
really
perfect post started to crack.
so
The
much
narrative she'd
clearer
curated for
understanding.
years
These
of the
signs can
flawless,
transform how
festive
you
family
approach
was
relationships,
unraveling. I remember
giving
reading
you a
one
deeper
comment that
insight
said,
into what's
"This is why chosen
really
family matters. Because the
so
people who
much
hurt you the
clearer
most are
understanding.
often the
These
ones who were
signs can
supposed to
transform how
protect
you
you."
approach
That line stayed with
relationships,
me because it
giving you a
reminded me that
deeper
I wasn't
insight into
alone.
what's
My story wasn't
really
rare, just rarely spoken. Here's
so
the thing
much
about
clearer
truth. It doesn't
understanding.
shout.
These
It doesn't
signs can
demand.
transform
It
how
just
you approach
stands quiet,
relationships,
steady,
giving you a deeper
unshakable.
insight
And when you
into
speak
what's
it, you
really
don't just set yourself free. You
so
set the
much
record
clearer
straight. The lesson
understanding.
I carry
These
from that
signs can
moment,
transform
truth
how
might
you
make
approach
others
relationships,
uncomfortable. But hiding it
giving you
will
a
always
deeper
cost you the
insight
most.
into what's
You deserve to be the
really
main character in your own life.
so
Not a
much
blurry
clearer
figure at the edge of
understanding.
someone else's
These
version of
signs can
events.
transform
And as
how
the
you
dust
approach
settled, something
relationships,
else happened.
giving you
People
a
I hadn't
deeper
spoken to
insight
in
into
years
what's
reached out.
really
Old friends, former
so much
teachers,
clearer
coworkers who had seen the
understanding.
quiet
These
way I
signs
worked,
can transform how you
achieved,
approach
and waited for
relationships,
validation that never
giving
came.
you a
They
deeper
said things
insight
like,
into
"We
what's
saw you.
really
You deserved better. Thank you
so
for
much
speaking
clearer
what so many of us
understanding.
have
These
felt."
signs
And in
can
the middle of
transform
all
how
that,
you approach
as the old narrative
relationships,
crumbled and the
giving
truth
you a
stood
deeper
tall,
insight
someone
into
very
what's
unexpected
really
showed up. My mother, in
so
person at my door. Let me tell you what happened next. There's this idea we carry that inheritance is only about money, about heirlooms, jewelry, properties, trust funds. But sometimes what we inherit runs deeper. Sometimes we inherit silence, expectation, patterns of pain wrapped in ribbon and called tradition. After my truth came out and the family image cracked, my mother showed up at my door, not with flowers, not with an apology, but with posture, with presence, with the practice weight of someone used to controlling the narrative. And for the first time, I didn't flinch. I didn't try to win her over. I just listened because I needed to hear it for myself. How she'd justify what they did, how she
So
twisted
much
into
clearer
something small,
understanding.
something
These signs can
dismissible. And
transform
she
how you
did.
approach
She said,
relationships,
"You've always been so
giving you
difficult
a
to
deeper
love." And
insight
in that
into what's
moment, the
really
entire architecture of my childhood
so
made
much
sense.
clearer
That's when I
understanding.
understood.
These
This wasn't
signs
just
can
about one
transform
missed
how you approach
Thanksgiving. This was the
relationships,
legacy, the
giving you a
inheritance I
deeper
had been
insight
handed,
into
the
what's
quiet
really
message. Love is conditional. You
so
must earn
much
your
clearer
place. You are too
understanding.
much
These
or not
signs can
enough, but
transform
never
how you
just
approach
right. It had been
relationships,
passed down like
giving
fine
you a
china,
deeper insight
carefully,
into
quietly
what's
generation to
really
generation, not with
so
malice, but
much
with muscle
clearer
memory. But
understanding.
then,
These
a week
signs can
later,
transform
something
how
else
you approach
arrived. A letter
relationships,
from Grandma
giving you a
Margaret's
deeper
lawyers.
insight
Inside
into
was a
what's
handwritten
really
note, not a formal document,
so
not
much clearer
legalese, just her
understanding.
words.
These
My dearest
signs can
Lena, I
transform
saw
how you
you
approach
all those years
relationships,
quiet in the corners,
giving you a
creating
deeper
beauty in
insight into what's
silence. I'm sorry I
really
didn't say this when I could, but
so
I've made
much
what amends I
clearer
can. The
understanding.
trust is
These
yours.
signs can
No
transform
strings,
how you
no
approach
conditions. Use it
relationships,
to build the life
giving
you
you
were
a deeper
always meant to
insight
live.
into what's
And remember,
really
belonging isn't earned, it's
so much
recognized.
clearer
At the bottom,
understanding.
in her
These
delicate
signs can
script,
transform how you approach
I kept every
relationships,
drawing you slipped under
giving
my
you a
door.
deeper
You were
insight
never
into what's
invisible. Not to
really
me. That's when the tears came.
so much
Not because of the
clearer
money,
understanding.
not even because
These
of the
signs can
recognition,
transform
but
how
because
you
for the
approach
first time,
relationships,
someone in my family
giving
had
you a
seen me
deeper
clearly,
insight
had
into what's
acknowledged that I was
really
worth something just as I was.
so
Here's what
much
that
clearer
moment taught me.
understanding.
We can't
These
always choose
signs
what
can
we
transform
inherit,
how you
but we
approach
can choose what we
relationships,
pass forward.
giving
We
you
can
a
carry
deeper
pain and
insight
let it
into
end with
what's
us.
really
Or we can transform it into
so
art,
much
into
clearer
healing, into hope
understanding.
for the next
These
person who
signs can
needs it.
transform
A
how you
small but
approach
life-changing
relationships,
lesson. You are allowed
giving
to
you a
break the
deeper
cycle.
insight
You
into
are
what's
allowed to be the
really
first to speak, the
so
first to
much
heal,
clearer
the first to
understanding.
offer
These
softness
signs
where
can
only
transform
silence
how
lived
you approach
before. And
relationships,
so, with her letter
giving
still
you a
in my
deeper
hands,
insight
I
into
did what
what's
she asked.
really
I started building something,
so
not just for
much
me,
clearer
but for everyone who's
understanding.
ever stood
These
at the edge
signs
of the
can
family
transform how
photo,
you approach
wondering if they mattered.
relationships,
I created a
giving you a
fund,
deeper
a
insight
scholarship,
into
a
what's
beginning.
really
And that's how this story, the
so
one that
much
started with
clearer
exclusion,
understanding.
became a
These
story about
signs can transform
reclamation,
how you
about
approach
creating space for
relationships,
others. Now,
giving you a
there's only
deeper
one piece
insight
left to
into
tell
what's
you. The
really
ending, or maybe the beginning of what
so
it means
much
to
clearer
belong,
understanding.
truly,
These
fully,
signs can
without
transform how
audition.
you approach
Healing is not a finish
relationships,
line. It doesn't
giving
arrive
you a
with
deeper
fanfare or
insight
confetti.
into what's
It comes
really
quietly, in small moments you barely
so
notice at
much
first.
clearer
Like waking up one
understanding.
morning
These
and not
signs
checking
can
your family's
transform
social
how you
media,
approach
like laughing,
relationships,
truly laughing,
giving you a
with people
deeper
who see
insight
you,
into
like
what's
sitting alone at a
really
coffee shop and not feeling
so much
lonely.
clearer
My life didn't change
understanding.
overnight,
These
but
signs
it
can
changed.
transform how
The
you
girl who
approach
used to wait for an
relationships,
invitation now
giving you a
sends her
deeper
own
insight
to
into
Sunday
what's
dinners with
really
friends, to community art
so
nights, to
much
quiet walks
clearer
with people who
understanding.
hold space,
These
not
signs can
expectations.
transform how you
The
approach
design agency where I
relationships,
used to work late to
giving
prove
you a
myself.
deeper
Now I
insight
run
into
it,
what's
and every new
really
designer who walks through the door
so
hears the
much
same thing
clearer
from me. You
understanding.
don't need to
These
perform
signs
here.
can
You just need
transform
to
how
be
you
honest.
approach
That's where your
relationships,
real talent lives.
giving you a
And at
deeper
home,
insight
my
into
fridge
what's
is covered in
really
drawings from my neighbor's kids.
so
My
much
bookshelf holds
clearer
letters from people
understanding.
I've
These
mentored,
signs can
each one
transform
reminding
how
me
you
that
approach
giving what I never
relationships,
received is
giving
its
you a
own kind of
deeper insight
redemption.
into
No
what's
glitter, no
really
spotlight, just real,
so
imperfect
much
love
clearer
built from the inside
understanding.
out. The
These signs
final,
can
quiet
transform how
lesson I'll
you
leave
approach
you with: healing
relationships,
isn't just about what you
giving you a
walk away
deeper
from.
insight
It's about
into
what you
what's
walk toward.
really
A life where you speak up,
so
where you
much
rest
clearer
without guilt, where
understanding.
you laugh
These
loudly and
signs can
take up
transform
space,
how you
where your
approach
story doesn't need
relationships,
approval to matter.
giving you a
You
deeper
deserve that
insight
life.
into what's
Even if your family
really
never gave you the map, you can
so
draw one
much
of your own.
clearer
And somewhere
understanding.
along the way,
These
you'll
signs
find
can
your people,
transform how
the
you
ones who
approach
say, you don't need
relationships,
to be more.
giving
We
you a
already love
deeper
who you
insight
are.
into
I
what's
still get messages
really
from people who've read my story.
so
Some
much
are angry,
clearer
some are
understanding.
silent,
These
but many
signs
say
can
this:
transform how
thank
you
you.
approach
You gave me the words I
relationships,
didn't know I needed.
giving you a
And if
deeper
that's you,
insight into
listening
what's
now, I
really
see you. I honor your story.
so
And I hope
much
you know
clearer
you are not
understanding.
alone.
These
You never
signs can
were.
transform
And
how
maybe
you
that's the
approach
real
relationships,
inheritance. Not the pain
giving
they
you a
left
deeper
us, but the
insight into
strength we
what's
grew from
really
it. The lives we get to build after
so
the
much
silence.
clearer
Lives full of
understanding.
color
These
and
signs can
connection and
transform how you
choice.
approach
Thank you for
relationships,
listening to my story.
giving you a
And
deeper
now, it's
insight
your
into
turn
what's
to write your
really
own, to build a life you deserve.
so much
And welcome in
clearer
the kind of love
understanding.
that was
These
always meant
signs
for
can
you.
transform